It looks like we are now being live streamed on YouTube. So for those of you that are just joining us on social media, welcome. And those of you that are on the Zoom channel, thank you for joining us as well. We are now recording this meeting too, so you should have gotten a notification from Zoom that that's happening. That's standard. We always record our meetings and make those available on the website. So this is not unusual, just that Zoom has decided to share that information a little differently with everyone with their latest update. So once again, we are recording this meeting and we are streaming live on our social media channels. I believe you can check this meeting out on YouTube and Facebook, depending on your social media preference. We are still doing pretty well with getting our CSC members to join in. I think we almost have a critical mass, so we'll give a couple more seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us on this lovely Wednesday. We do want to make sure that while you're waiting for the meeting to get started, that you see the instructions for naming and changing your screen name via Zoom and adding in those extra tags for us to make sure that we track you appropriately. This does help us keep track of who's on the line and also helps us keep track of who is eligible to vote if we do have a vote in our meeting today. So thanks again for joining us. We'll get started in just a couple seconds. Hello, Cynthia. Thanks for the note. All right, it looks like we've got a pretty good group today. So why don't we go ahead and get started so that we can start on time and end on time. Thank you all for joining us again. This is the AB 617 Community Steering Committee for Stockton, and we are excited to see you this August for our monthly meeting. My name is Erica Manuel. I'm the CEO of the nonprofit organization called ILG, and I am so happy to lead the facilitation team for this community with my team members, Hannah and Julia. They have been part of this committee for a bit, and so you should be familiar with them. They are waving right now and are available to help you with any challenges or problems or questions that you might have throughout the meeting, in addition to the Air District team. We are pretty committed to making sure that everyone gets on the meeting and is able to feel comfortable during that meeting. And that includes everything from your technology, but also making sure you have language access. And so I want to see if Douglas made it back online, or it looks like he's still here and you're on your laptop.
Hey, Erica.
Hi there. All right, so we're good with Douglas. We always wanted to make sure he's able to check interpretation, and we'll do the same with you. So if you have any challenges during this meeting, please feel free to reach out to us during any point of the meeting if you have any challenges with hearing or any challenges with seeing what's on the screen or understanding what is moving forward. So we have had quite a few Zoom meetings, so we're going to dispense with a lot of the logistics for the sake of time. But on the screen right now is showing the screen name and renaming and how important that is and how to do that accurately. We are happy to help rename you. If you need any assistance, we can do that behind the scenes. Just raise that Zoom hand and we're happy to do that. The next slide shows you how to raise that Zoom hand. You can go ahead and push *9 to raise your Zoom hand. And if you wanted to mute or unmute yourself, it's *6 if you are not on a computer. If you're in the stipend program, as a reminder, you'll need to stay in this meeting for 75% of the meeting to get credit for it. And as you know, we track that meeting attendance through the recording. So the recording notice that you just got is a reference for who is on the line and how long you're on the line. And that's why that screen name is so important. It's also great for keeping track of what happens in the meeting and putting that on the website. These CSC meetings are open to the public. We're always so happy to have members of the public online with us through Facebook and YouTube and even on the Zoom line, but we do ask that you reserve your comments for the public comment portion of the meeting, and we'll flag you for when that takes place. But you can always, throughout the meeting, post in the Zoom chat or submit comments to the 8617 email address or through the Facebook or YouTube comment options. All right, so before we go to any of the agenda pieces, I just want to make sure that there aren't any people that need to be renamed for purposes of attendance. Is there anyone that needs to be renamed that's on the phone or needs any assistance with renaming today? I'm not seeing any. I think we're good to go. And I don't see any notes from our friends at the Air District either. So I think we might be good. If at any point you do need that, please let us know. We'll try and do that throughout the process of the meeting. We have both voting and breakout groups today. So the renaming is probably more important than normal. And so we will be checking back a couple different times through the course of this meeting to make sure that everyone is taken care of. So my role is to be a neutral facilitator in today's meeting and to make sure that you and your community co-hosts can really have an informative, productive, and really structured conversation that meets your goals. We want to make sure all of you have the opportunity to have your voices heard and that we meet the agenda structure and topics, right? That we cover everything, we start on time and we end on time, and we leave enough time for public comment because we do have a lot of interest in these issues from the general public. I will also note that we have a possible voting item in tonight's meeting. So in order to allow enough time for that, we will try and stick to the allotted times on the agenda, but we have some flexibility. We will be working within a 2-hour meeting timeline tonight. And we're going to try and do our best to honor the intent here, which is to have meaningful discussion, right? Your agendas are created by your CSC members, and we're going to show you what's on the agenda tonight. But know that sometimes things come up and you want to bring up additional topics, and that sometimes happens. We will honor that conversation in concert with your community co-host tonight and make sure that the relevant topics are discussed and that the time is honored as well. As always, we want to keep our conversation and our tone respectful to your fellow attendees and to the public. And certainly you guys have modeled that so well for the last few months. So we appreciate that so much. As a reminder, we'll put up on the screen some tips for sharing this virtual space for those of you that are just joining us. We do ask that if you can, that you do your best to speak up, share your thoughts, share your insights. You are part of what makes this committee great, and we want to hear from you. If at all possible, please keep your camera on. We love to see you, and that helps us understand how you're feeling about certain topics, whether you're loving or not loving the direction of the conversation. It just gives us a little bit more of that in-person feel that we miss so much. And then the last thing is to focus the chat comments on the current topic. And that's for 2 reasons. The first is to make sure that you can really hear and understand what people are saying verbally, but also so that it's not distracting. So people are really not having to pay attention to 2 things at once. We do appreciate you making those concessions for us all to make sure that everyone can experience the meeting in the best way. The next slide shows how quickly to really just share this personal space. It's really about having a productive dialogue. You have seen these meeting agreements and reminders before. I won't read them. We will honor them. And I just want to make sure that you all have those top of mind as we begin our conversation today about how we're going to move forward with our CSC. So let's take a look at the agenda for tonight. It's showing on your screen. As I mentioned, we have a 2-hour time frame set up for this meeting. We're going to try and end no later than 7 p.m. After our welcome from our host and our co-host, we're going to have a discussion about the charter amendments, and that we've been discussing that now for a couple of months. And I know that the Air District's been working really closely with a number of you to refine that document, and we're likely ready for a potential vote tonight on those proposed amendments. So that's certainly something that we will look forward to. And then we're going to move into breakout groups where we're going to discuss how best to implement the CERT measures. And then we're going to discuss some standing updates before we wrap up. So today's agenda, it doesn't seem very long, but it's actually covering quite a few topics that the CSC has expressed a lot of interest in the past year. And one of the things that I think is important is that there are a lot of really important and relevant activities that are happening in subcommittee meetings to kind of move the CERT program forward and the discussions forward. And we're starting to see that progress be made, and that's really, really exciting. So to set the tone for today's meeting and to share some additional notes with you, I'd love to turn it over to Jessica from the Air District and Matt, who's your community co-host tonight, for them to say a few words about this meeting before they dive into the agenda.
Absolutely, thank you. So first of all, I want to start by, of course, thanking you all, as always, for attending tonight, but also congratulating all of you. For those that do not know, your CERP, your Community Emissions Reduction Program that we worked so hard together over the past 15 months, was approved by the CARB board last Thursday. And this is truly a time to celebrate. This meeting and what we're doing tonight, as you can see, and as was just run down on the agenda, is perfect timing for us to take this great action by the board and now really put pen to paper and figure out how we're going to implement this CERP. So tonight is all about getting finalizing some of the procedural stuff, of course, as you saw with the charter discussion, but really talking about how we break up all of the different measures here, how we get this funding out the door, how we outreach to the community. We're going to start that tonight. And the takeaway, the goal of today's meeting is to have at least, the initial beginnings of subcommittees that are set up. We want to maybe even have subcommittee meetings before the next steering committee meeting. We want to get these things going. So congratulations, it's such a big momentous thing. One thing also to note, and of course, just to thank all of you who supported and commented to the CARB board. There were many, many, many supportive comments from you all, from members of the public, and lots of interest, I think, in continuing to talk about some funding. That was sort of the last little bits of discussion that we were talking about, as you all recall, leading up to the final CERP about the port. There was still some movement kind of at the end of our CARB's board meeting about kind of leaving the door open for discussions, sort of encouraging to continue that discussion. So that's not something we're going to talk about today. I know some of you are probably eager to talk about it. We do have an agenda to get to, but I certainly encourage you attend the agenda setting meeting next week or reach out to us if that's a topic we want to pursue per sort of CARB's direction. Maybe that's something that we talk about and agendize for the next steering committee meeting. But we are so excited. I know that a lot of you on this call were at the agenda setting meeting. So we have a great agenda, I think, tonight, and I'm definitely going to pass it to our co-host to talk a bit about it and to talk about some exciting stuff he also has to bring to this intro. Matt.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity to play co-host. How's everybody doing tonight? Silence. Oh, this is where you all holler back, right? So cool. I wanted to be a community co-host because we're just working on this air quality beat, 40 hours, 60 hours a week. And so I feel like disclosure to AB 617 to this community is a responsibility of those of us that are here. And so I want to tell you about what I'm working on in air quality. And I hope I can expect the same from the rest of you that are here, not just the Air District, but community-based partners that are working on air quality initiatives. We should be telling each other about those things. And so this is part of fulfilling my pledge to disclose early and often the work that I'm doing on behalf of air quality, air monitoring, and air pollution reduction in Stockton. And so I'm going to go to share a slideshow. And it's going to be I'm going to talk very briefly about Little Manila, but I'm using this opportunity to introduce some friends from Sacramento, which is the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment. Stephanie, can you raise your hand in the reactions feature just so that bumps you up to the front of the list? There's Stephanie. She'll be talking to you briefly while I present the slideshows for her. And Stephanie, you can just tell me to next slide. I think I'll be able to follow, but sometimes you might have to yell at me. And the purpose of me introducing you to Stephanie in the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment, which we abbreviate by saying OEHA. I don't know whose idea that was, but I'm sticking with it. The whole idea is that Stockton's understudied, right? The need for our community air monitoring plan is proof of that. We need that baseline public health data and that public health research to justify new paths forward. So that's why we're going after multiple funding sources for monitoring and powerful partners like OEHA. So yeehaw, let's go. I'm going to share this slideshow real quick. And so, those of you, hopefully you can see this, F5. Can you see my PowerPoint screen? Anybody?
We can see it, and we can see the sides as well. So it's not in presentation mode. It's just in, yeah, absolutely.
There we go. We're in presentation mode.
Now we are.
Finally, sorry. So, when we were talking about air monitoring back in October and November, I was really advocating for our air monitoring plan to have one of these high density remote sensor networks that lots of other cities are building with Purple Air. I was pleased to learn that Jonathan and Catholic Charities in Little Manila were working with Central California Asthma Collaborative to increase our sensor density here in Stockton. This is something that we need to address. Folks in Berkeley know more about what they're breathing than we do. And we have a cluster of emission sources that they don't have. This is an environmental justice issue. This is a data justice issue. And so this is what I'm working on. And I have a call for community partners out. So anybody that wants to help host a sensor, buy a sensor, get a sensor integrated into our data, I'd be happy to work with anybody on this committee to get that done. So just so you know, I have multiple proposals out. Nothing's quite funded yet. We went after 2 different proposals with the California Justice Department to increase sensor density and modeling opportunities here in Stockton. We will be pursuing a CARB community air grant in October to do more of the same. And there's, the bright idea here, if you could call it that, is that Matt and Little Manila can share data with you within a protected framework. And CARB and Valley Air, they're government agencies. And so they have to meet a much higher standard, a much more rigorous standard for data quality. And because of that, they buy really expensive equipment and they hire really talented scientists to make sure it's all telling the truth. And they give you that truth when they have it. I want to warn you now, just in case. And so if I have a remote sensor network, I can use the precautionary principle to work with residents and partners and school principals and nonprofit directors to say, hey, it might be a bad day. Don't forget your inhaler. Be ready to lock yourself inside and turn on the air conditioner and filter the air. Let's protect you so you don't have a respiratory event. And so we're proposing numerous strategies to get the funding to build this sensor network and to work with the community on an alerting system. That's a Little Manila initiative. One additional layer that I'm really excited about is this next project where we've been trying to help the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment bring some science to Stockton that's really special. And it's called biomonitoring. And so I'm going to yield the rest of my time to this presentation with Stephanie to walk us through. There's Stephanie's information. If you have questions at the end of this, we can also drop this in the chat for you. But with that, Stephanie, I'm going to jump into the first slide and we'll get underway. Sound good?
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. We really appreciate the time you've given us today, and I will try to make this quick. As Matt mentioned, my name is Stephanie Jarmel, and I am a senior environmental scientist with OEHA. And OEHA provides support to the California Air Resources Board, local air districts, and communities by evaluating potential health effects from community air exposures and also potential health benefits from reducing those exposures, identifying and tracking community air pollution concerns, and also by designing and implementing targeted biomonitoring studies in AB 617 communities. So my team at OEHA focuses on the designing and implementing targeted biomonitoring studies. And the goals of these are generally to increase our understanding of air pollution exposures faced by community members, and also to evaluate specific emission and exposure reduction strategies that you might want to implement. And today I'm going to be talking about a biomonitoring project we're hoping to conduct in the Stockton community. So what is biomonitoring? Biomonitoring is a way to measure chemicals in a person's body, usually by analyzing blood or urine samples. It tells us about chemical exposures from all types of sources, and that includes exposures from air, water, dust, food, and consumer products. Next slide, yep. So the main goals of the Stockton Air Pollution Exposure Project, which is our planned biomonitoring project, are to learn more about air pollution exposures to school children in Stockton and to evaluate the effectiveness of school air filtration at reducing children's air pollution exposures. So the project will take place at a school in Stockton, which already has air filtration installed. We'll be collecting urine from children, and we'll also be recruiting one parent or guardian to assist with that urine collection. And then we'll analyze the children's urine for chemicals that can indicate if they've been exposed to air pollution. And also to help us further understand the biomonitoring results, we'll be asking parents questions about their child's activities, diet, respiratory health, and other factors. And we'll also measure air quality at the school during the study period. So pending approval to conduct the project at a Stockton school, we're hoping to recruit participants in September and October of this year, so that is coming up, with sample collection occurring in early November. And then after we complete the laboratory analyses, we will return the children's biomonitoring results to the parents who request them. And we'll also give presentations at community meetings such as this one to summarize the main findings of the study at the end. So why is this project important? Why are we doing it? It's important for a number of reasons. It empowers families to learn more about their children's air pollution exposures and possible ways to reduce exposures. We can evaluate the effectiveness of school air filtration as a way to reduce children's exposures. And it also supports other public health efforts to improve air quality, not only in Stockton, but also in other AB 617 communities. So today we really just wanted to make the Stockton community aware of this project. We're open to feedback and suggestions, and we hope to provide a more detailed update in the future. This slide shows the partners who've been involved in this project. I did want to give a special thank you, you're good, to Matt Holmes, who's provided such invaluable support to us throughout the planning process. And as Matt mentioned, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I will put my email address into the chat, and it was shown on the first slide of the presentation, which I believe will be shared after this as well. And we look forward to working with the Stockton community. And with that, I'll give it back to Matt.
Yeah, thanks so much. You know, I saw a previous iteration of this biomonitoring work take place in West Oakland. And, you know, we all talk about air pollution. It's a very abstract thing. When you come home with results of biomarkers in your child's urine, it makes it really real. You know, the idea that there's something in your body that somebody else's garbage they threw in the sky is in your body and your children's body. It makes air pollution really real. And this is one of the few things we can't escape. So I'm not qualified to give you that data, but Stephanie and her team at OEHA are. And so I'm just grateful to have First World Science here in Stockton, California, finally.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you, Stephanie. Fantastic presentation and a great primer for what we're going to be doing over the next few months, but certainly a great beginning of the conversation as we look into supplementation and other things. And I know that CARB's even working on some important discussions about health effects. So this is definitely timely, and we do appreciate all of that insight. Do we have any questions for Matt or Stephanie before we move on with our agenda?
I'd just like to say that Ned would be thrilled to death to hear that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Elizabeth.
That's why we're here.
I do see a hand from Margot, it looks like.
Stephanie, yeah, I was just curious, what kinds of things would you see in the urine based on air quality, and knowing that we're in an environment that has agriculture and pesticides and all kinds of things, do you differentiate? Are you able to differentiate air quality through urine results?
So we're looking at certain groups of chemicals like voluntary organic compounds, PM 2.5, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So we are able to differentiate between the different groups of chemicals. So what we look for is actually in the urine that called metabolites, which show potential exposures to these different groups of chemicals. So we are looking at a few different groups.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions for Stephanie or Matt? Seeing none, I'll just again say thank you for that presentation. I think you got a lot of great feedback and certainly appreciation for bringing that insight to all of us. And what we will do is continue to loop in this committee as opportunities exist to participate in this effort. And certainly I'm sure Matt will share all those opportunities with the CSE. And I think everyone just keep that top of mind as we have the conversation today, but then also moving forward, certainly as this becomes available potentially for your children or for your neighbors or for your members if you have them. And it looks like we've got some things in the chat for specifically, Matt, for you as it relates to the air monitoring. So if you do have those opportunities to collaborate, please share that via chat and connect offline. All right, we're going to continue moving on with our agenda. And the next thing on our agenda is to review and potentially adopt amendments to the charter. And what we wanted to do is discuss some of the amendments that have already been made to this committee charter. And as you will recall, we've had a couple of meetings where we've gotten a really great conversation. We've gotten a lot of really good suggestions from this group about some adjustments and some refinements, things maybe that could be clarified or added to the language in this charter. And then as a reminder, this is a document that's supposed to sort of reflect the natural evolution of your committee, right? You've transitioned into a new stage of your role, right? And so this document is actually going to add some consistency, some structure to how you're going to be governed and how you'd all like for this committee to run. And so there have been a lot of developments, I think, in the last few weeks. So I think we need just a little bit of a high level overview of the major changes so that you can make a concerted and active decision. And I think Jess and maybe one of your CSC members are going to help walk you through what some of the specifics are so that you feel comfortable making a decision about whether to approve those amendments.
Absolutely. So just for the sake of time, I've dropped the link that went out to the group the other day in the chat just now. So scroll up, it might be like a couple down now from my comment that I just dropped in, but I'm also going to share my screen here. And as Erica mentioned, we've been through several iterations of this new, I'll call it the new charter, the charter from, I think the past 3 or 4 meetings now. We've had several different comments, several iterations, lots of great back and forth with some folks. And then as Erica mentioned, I'm actually a little bit down the line as I go through this, going to pass it to Taylor Williams, who's done some great work on your behalf based on a lot of great feedback on really what's a big implementation discussion and really leads us well into the rest of the committee meeting tonight, which is subcommittees. So I'm just going to briefly scroll. I'll highlight a couple of things. Every time we've sent this out, we've highlighted what the recent changes are. So everything highlighted is just reflective of the most recent change. You have all seen 2 or 3 iterations now of different highlights since the original charter that was that we've been operating under for the past 15, 16 months. So just quickly highlighting, and if there are any questions, I can certainly point to you to the folks that that submitted some of these comments, but some of these were just clarifying comments. District in development and implementation of the SERP is kind of the new steering committee role. We wanted to make sure that that was highlighted, that was a change and certainly an important part of working with the district on moving forward the community emissions reduction program process. This is a section under member participation that I really wanted to highlight for you all and just take a moment to thank. A lot of you had this comment. Actually, if you listened to the board meeting last Thursday at the CARB hearing, this was a comment, a common theme, and actually a recommendation from CARB staff to include in the charter, which is onboarding and making sure that we have a process not only to make sure that CSCs our CSC members are participating, but if participation drops off, meaning folks maybe resign or their membership is revoked per the original standing sort of rule that if you haven't attended 3 consecutive meetings, and we added here without explanation or notice, the membership may be revoked. We still wanted an opportunity, and it wasn't in your charter before, to make sure we knew how we were going to get CSC members back on board. Especially, we want to make sure it's resident driven, right? That's the process here, and if we lose several residents for, perhaps lack of time or availability to commit, how do we get those residents on board? And if we're including new people, or say you're a primary member and you now have an alternate that's going to take your place and it's the middle of the process, how do we make sure we have a mechanism outlined in the charter to onboard these folks? So this new section here, as you saw when we sent it out, is outlining how it's important for new members, including new alternates, to complete a process. And by doing so, the new members need to be fully engaged, definitely understand all of the hard work that the current CSE members have gone through, and want to make sure that they have the background knowledge that all of you already have from working through this process so much. So the district, in coordination with the co-leads and interest from CSE partners, would work together to onboard these new folks, which of course is reviewing all of the documents you've all put together, overview of CSE meetings, and any other pertinent information. So of course, right now it says camp and SERP documents, but maybe there's documents from subcommittees or things that evolve. Instead of outlining that here, we just kind of leave it as a blanket statement and something that we want to make sure is outlined in the charter. So I just wanted to highlight that as a really, really new piece, and something a lot of you have asked for. The other couple of things, and then I'm going to pass it actually to Taylor Williams, is just clarifying a couple of comments that people wanted to know sort of what consensus was. And so we had a little bit of a clarification here. We also noted that only during a scheduled meeting and times listed on the agenda is when we will take action that lead to a vote. So we want to just clarify that with one word. And then finally, subcommittees. A lot of you have been involved in this discussion many, many times. Some of you have even seen some of the work, the pre-work that Taylor had put together, an outline of how we want to govern subcommittees. So this list here actually references an attachment that I will scroll to and then pass it to Taylor, of subcommittee roles, responsibilities, and procedures, as well as an identification or acknowledgement that when we have subcommittees, we'll certainly list them. We'll make any participation and even notes and other things related to the committee on our district website. So with that, to introduce really the newest piece of this, aside from the onboarding process, I will pass it to Taylor. And Taylor, let me know if you need me to scroll down or however else you want to do this.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks, Jess. So as both Jess and Erica mentioned, like a lot of this iteration for the charter has come from understanding our value as a CSC for the implementation process. And everybody has kind of pointed to subcommittees being the main function of that. So like appreciate working with Jess over the last couple of weeks to be able to like start digging into like what that might look like procedurally. So here I've like laid out a couple of roles and responsibilities, and the first one should look pretty familiar. I mean, the air districts will be the convener of the group. So responsibilities of helping CSE author agendas, to send out the calendar invites, provide any accessibility services, et cetera. So it looks pretty similar to the role so far in these CSE meetings, as well as like the few subcommittee meetings we have had. And then for the community steering committee members, this is where it starts to get a little bit deeper into the specificity of subcommittees. So the three main expectations for arriving to these meetings are to provide questions and solicit feedback from meeting participants. So not just other CSE members, but also like external technical advisors, which we'll get into, implementation partners. So that's City of Stockton or the county or SJCOG or other ones like can't think of at the moment. But then arriving at meetings, having reviewed those agendas for meetings, prepared with questions, and then just following any of the reports that come out of the CERT measures and overall implementation efforts. And again, we can reference that a little bit later on the next page. So those are expectations. Main responsibilities are, the central one is there will be an available facilitation role for CSE members now. So it's a little bit more like in our hands of, we arrive to these meetings, regardless of like what subcommittee meeting it is, with the ability to say like, this is the agenda that seems to have come out of the last meeting that we put together, we share with folks, and then actually like engage in running that meeting ourselves. And there is a note here, if folks don't want to volunteer themselves to be facilitators, that the Air Pollution Control District is there to be a backstop for that and provide that role. And then the second piece is deciding on the frequency. So whether that is a regular cadence, like monthly or quarterly, or bi-weekly or whatever. Or if that's something that is continually made decisions about. So like maybe you say, I want to meet 6 weeks from now, and everybody agrees, and then you come back 6 weeks and like, oh, we have something more urgent, let's meet in 2 weeks. So that might be like that might be a continual responsibility, which is why it's included here in this section. And then finally, if anything that's not captured in those two is captured in section 2 of this charter, so that would govern your responsibilities as CSE member in general. So the last section of this is specifically about technical advisors and recruitment, and this comes from out of the conversations for meetings here, CSC meeting, or agenda setting meetings, and I think 1 or 2 tag meetings that have already happened. That there will be, a designated technical advisory group subcommittee, as well. There will be a technical advisory element to individual subcommittees across the board as well. So wanted to be specific about like what that role looks like. And essentially, the objective for technical advisors is to provide analysis on individual measures, so incentive or implementation, and also holistic recommendations for the SERP implementation across the board. So like, as we are like putting together our thoughts on how do these particular implementation measures or incentive measures interact with each other, that's the kind of beginning of that exercise to understand like the more holistic implementation. And then those objectives will be supported by data, largely from emissions inventories, recommendations, or alternative public funding sources as well, just to like understand it, who should be implementing, like what is the best way to do it, and like where can we get the best information to understand what the impacts are. And then finally, the last 2 paragraphs are about recruitment, essentially. So anybody can offer a suggestion for who to bring on as a technical advisor, as CSE members, or anybody in the subcommittee meetings, rather, can offer a recommendation for who to bring on as a TA. And if it's not clear that there is consensus around bringing that particular group or person in, then it'll just be put to a vote, and that procedure is described in section 3 of this charter. We'll just adhere to those rules mentioned at the top. And that last paragraph is largely about what do we identify in the person that we're bringing in, and just notes that this is a recurring process as well. So over the next 4 years of implementation, this is a continued responsibility.
Thanks, Taylor. And I just want to I'll stop sharing my screen really briefly to just look at all of you, but just thank all of you for a lot of the input we've received over a lot of these iterations, and especially thank Taylor. You can tell he's put a lot of hard work and a lot of thought into this. I know a lot of you, again, last time he shared some of the draft of what eventually came together in this draft you see before you. A lot of you were really thankful and responsive then, and so he sort of took, I think, that momentum and that support from you all when it came to the technical advisory group and sort of the iterations we came to that. So I just want to thank him, but of course, thank you all for the support that you provided him and provided us as we came to this draft. So with that, I guess what we'll do, Erica, I'll turn it back to you to facilitate any questions.
Absolutely. And just huge kudos to those of you that weighed in. And there were a lot of comments made over the last few months to reflect on what you think would be really, really important from a governance standpoint. And this is one of the most important things a committee can do, is really clarify how it's going to run and be managed. And that's fantastic. So at this time, I just want to check in with everyone, see if this reflects what you discussed, if this reflects what you had hoped to see. And if we're substantively close, we're going to move forward with a roll call vote. One disclaimer that I have is that, no document is 100% perfect. There are documents developed by committees that have, nuances here and there that need to be adjusted. So today's vote, if you did vote, isn't whether or not this is a perfect document. It's really about whether it's really substantively close and if it reflects the spirit of what was intended. Is it about 90% there, 95 or more, right? If it's close, then it's time maybe for us to take a vote. We don't want to wordsmith and continue to adjust forever. So if we feel like we're really nearing what we feel is the intent of this, then we are ready to have that discussion and vote. I do see a hand from Mary Elizabeth. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I just have a little bit of a concern regarding the facilitation role for CSC members in regards to the subcommittees. And I know, having taken notes and having read others' notes that, some note takers are more detailed than others. And I know in certain circumstances that is really an issue. And so I just wanted to make sure that, as with all of these AB 617 meetings, that the ad hoc meetings will also be recorded.
Absolutely. I'll just say that definitively right now, yes. And maybe we can just defer to and subsume that into what's in here right now, which is the district's responsibility for that technical piece. And that technical piece will include certainly recording. And also, just so you all know, we are going to, even though we want it to be committee facilitated, if that's the role, even though there is a piece in there that says if people choose, we can still facilitate. We will still be taking our notes and providing meeting summaries as always. I think all of this in general, the top layer is always the main piece of the charter. This subcommittee piece is more specific on how they're all going to be run, but we will record and post summaries as always.
Thanks, Mary Elizabeth. I see a hand from Ed Ward.
Thank you. I just wanted Taylor to get just a little better understanding. The way I read the facilitator role, it's that the facilitator is going to share with the CSC what the agenda is, or will that continue to be a partnership with the Air District and the CSC facilitator?
That'll continue to be a joint effort. So you'll see under the on page 8, top of page 8, part of the Air District's responsibilities are supporting CSC members to author agendas. So that'll be a continued collaborative process.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Ed. Any additional clarifying questions? I don't see any. Do we feel thumbs up? Do we feel like this is in line with what you thought it would be, and that what you'd expected, and that we've covered some of the big bases that we wanted to adjust over the last few? I see a few virtual thumbs up, or real ones are good too, but virtual thumbs up are fantastic if you feel like you've got what you think is a document that reflects your committee goals. Douglas, I see a hand. Is that a thumbs up, or is that a raising your hand?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you bring up the position, the paper that regarding the facilitator? I'd like to read that, because you're looking at it, I got to see it in order to understand it. I'm a very visual person. So can you put that back on so I can have some clear understanding what the facilitator does? Okay, responsibility.
And to clarify, this is for the subcommittees, correct?
Yeah. So what is the abbreviation SJVAPDC to fill in as a facilitator? So what does that acronym stand for?
Sorry, that's the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District.
Oh, okay.
And so maybe as clarification to be consistent, if I'm not mistaken, we might just say district otherwise. So we can, with however we move forward today, if we're okay with making clarifying corrections, we can correct that to say Air District, if that helps.
So the person who's who are going to be the next facilitator will have 72 hours to send a presentation to you to forward for review for the committee. That question.
Right. So and correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor, the intent is here that to have that role for the CSC members to be facilitators, but of course the Air District will be disseminating the agenda, setting up the Zoom link as always. So it would be the 72 hours in advance, I assume, is to share it with the district so the district can provide all of that, the link, the agenda, post it on the website 72 hours in advance. And that, again, that SJVAPCD, it's the Air District.
Okay, so that's the same thing as being a co-host, or that's just a different facilitator role. So they're two different jobs, right?
They're different, right? A co-host would be for like a regular CSC meeting and doing what Matt did today. And it could look the same, right? What Matt did today could be how a subcommittee could be run, but it would be different. We would ask for a co-host for our regular CSC meetings. If that's still, the way that we want to operate, that's what it's in here in the charter. But for these subcommittee meetings, maybe it's like a co-host. You can think of it like that, but it's a facilitator that's separate from those CSC meetings.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying it.
And I think too, this is in response to the desire to have the CSC this AB 617 process be community-led and community-driven. And so this is an opportunity for anyone on the CSC to play a more active role in those subcommittees, certainly. And then obviously with the CSC meetings, the main ones, the community co-host role is still an absolute option. Very similar, but different opportunities to weigh in and to engage with your fellow committee members. Any other clarifying questions? Okay, well, with a document like this, it is really important while certainly to achieve consensus, we also want to go on record acknowledging that you all believe that this is in line with your expectations. And so we will go ahead, even though I think we do have consensus, I think we will go ahead and do a formal roll call vote here. And so we have gone in to make sure that everyone that is eligible to vote is flagged. And we are going to put up on the screen some details and reminders about how to process a roll call vote. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I do see a couple comments in the chat that I don't think negate anything we've seen or said on the screen or that we've talked about. So I think those are all in line. We'll continue to keep those in the record. But while we're prepping this, we're going to show you a couple things on the screen to remind you of how to do this roll call vote. And that this time, if you do one scroll ahead, one slide up, please. Just as a reminder, the government representatives are ex officio, so you are not eligible to vote in this process. Alternates, if you are an alternate for someone, you are only eligible to vote if your primary member is not present. So what will happen is we'll call the primary member's name in order, and when their name is called, the alternate, if you are there in their place, will vote in their place. If you're an eligible voter, you'll see a V in your screen name. That's just, and it's possible that we miss somebody. The actual role for voters will be a roll call vote. So you'll hear the name of the main primary person for your organization. And at the end, if we happen to have missed anyone, we'll give an opportunity for anyone that was missed to put in their vote. And then we will seek a majority vote of 50% plus one of all the eligible voting CSC members present. So the protocol, we will call everyone in alphabetical order. Like I said, once you hear your name or the name of your primary, please unmute yourself and give a verbal yes or no. And then we'll record your vote and tell you the final tally. And the intent here certainly is to have a formal vote that is then memorialized and that you can then say your charter amendments have been amended. And then moving forward from this meeting, this charter will be in effect for your governance structure. Any questions before we get started with the roll call vote? I'm just going to catch up on the chat while I'm doing this as well.
Just to clarify, hello everyone, when we say alphabetical order, we mean by the first name, not by the last name.
We will do it by first name. All right, so I will ask Hannah and Julia if you are ready.
Yes.
Looks like we are, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and call the CSC members that are eligible by first name. We will record your vote and then we will do the tally and then we will have potentially an updated charter document. Our first CSC member is Anthony Macias Jr. Not here. Arlene Galindo.
Yes.
Oh, can I clarify? We are voting on, a yes vote means you approve the amendments to the charter. A no vote means you do not. So that is the motion, that you approve the amendments to the charter. Thank you for that, Arlene. I did get your yes. Bianca Mendoza. Catherine Grupa White.
Hi, Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, Catherine's alternate. Yes.
Great. Debbie Provost. Douglas Vigil.
Yes.
Thank you. Ed Ward.
Yes.
Esperanza Vielma.
Yes.
Eugene Fuss.
Yes.
Florence Quilantang.
Yes.
Gloria Alonso Cruz.
Yes.
Irene Kalimim. Jennifer Flores.
Yes.
Jennifer, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Almost missed you there. Jonathan Pruitt.
Yes.
Carl Nate Knott.
Yes.
Kenda Templeton. Kevin Amen. Leonard Seawood.
Yes.
Margot Prouse.
Yes.
Maria Cardenas. Mariah Looney. Mary Elizabeth.
Yes.
Matt Holmes.
Yes.
Ned Leiba. Noemi Garcia Jaragui. Paulette Gross. Regina Griffin.
Yes.
Sylvia Cantu.
Yes.
Stacy Penyasi.
Yes.
Taylor Williams.
Yes.
Tina Lau. Make sure I didn't miss Tina. Okay. Vanessa Palomares. Victoria Moreno. Okay, is there anyone that believes they're eligible to vote that I did not call? Okay, give us 1 second to tally and we'll be right back with you. All right, so we have a unanimous, as you might have heard, vote, and we just wanted to confirm the total number. We had 19 yeses in favor of the proposed amendments to the charter. So you have a new charter that will be effective immediately, but most recently for your next subcommittee meeting, this would take an effect. We do appreciate your patience while we did that roll call vote. We will also share that voting roster with all of you. Because it was a unanimous vote, everyone that was present voted yes. We won't show it, but normally we would show the yes and the no, so you could confirm that your vote was as it was supposed to be. But everyone voted unanimously, and we feel very confident that this will be put in your record appropriately. Any questions before we move on to the next part of our agenda? Congratulations, you've got a new charter. So nicely done, everybody. Very exciting work for a committee that's going to be in place for years. You've just set yourselves up for such success. So it's wonderful. Nicely done. All right, so our next portion of the agenda is implementation of the SERP measures. And this is really so that you can begin active implementation of the SERP that was just formally adopted and approved by CARB. So we're going to review the agenda setting committee's recommendations for measures. You're going to have discussions about subcommittees and the need and the way that you're going to implement. So this is really, really exciting. And you're going to do this in a breakout group exercise. And to give you a little bit more information about how that exercise is going to work, I'm going to hand it over to Jess and Matt to talk about how best to kind of structure and prep you for this exercise as you move forward with getting your SERP underway.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. And thanks all. I'm so excited that we have this charter in place. We have an adopted SERP. I think we're on a really great, productive roll. I know it took some time to get there. So thank you all for going through this process with us. I just dropped in the chat a link that we sent out last week to a short description of all of the measures that are in your adopted SERP. And you'll notice that they are already slightly sort of sorted into sort of some groupings that I'll have Matt explain here in a moment. But I'm going to quickly explain maybe the exercise and then the groupings and why they are what they are and how they got there. I'll turn it over to our co-hosts. So in general, the goal of today's exercise is to take a look at this grouping of SERP measures, not only in sort of this main grouping of we need to meet about them in subcommittees and we can just get going on them right now, but also the subgroupings of what those subcommittees look like. We want feedback on kind of how you feel that this some kind of subset of the CSC did with doing these subgroupings, but we also want your feedback, and we've solicited a couple of times before, on what partners now we should be working with to get these subcommittees going. As you saw just in the charter, these subcommittees aren't just going to be CSC members in the district kind of wondering how we move some of these things forward. We're going to be pulling in people, whether it's implementation partners, meaning people who maybe take advantage of the funding. So if I'm talking about truck funding, I'm talking about bringing in trucking fleets and people who can do outreach, maybe even people who sell trucks on getting things going. Or we're talking about technical partners. So there, maybe I'm talking about researchers that I know, or people at CARB or the Air District. Those are the people providing technical information on how to implement. So that's really what we're asking of you today. In the breakout groups, you'll work with district folks to get all of that information filled out. But I will right now pass it over to Matt, and Matt, either I can share my screen or you can share your screen. It doesn't matter to me, but if you can please sort of outline a little bit of the forethought that went into this exercise.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. I mean, this isn't rocket science, and the whole idea is that we all make this decision together. But, urban greening contains trees and trees because those things go together, and they seemed like a group that's going to be planted not in Air District property. It's something that's going to require, community support to bring local governments along. And, there's people like the city of Stockton and California State Transportation Agency are going to be essential to these two things. We need a group of people that are dedicated to moving that idea forward without being worried about the truck route out on Boggs Track. So we have too much work to do this all together, in my opinion. So we grouped those two under proposed urban greening subcommittees. I actually had bike paths and infrastructure in there. Mary Elizabeth recommended we pop that out by itself because it's more of an infrastructure project than a greening project. So, we just popped it out as part of the proposal to you all. Obviously, these heavy duty trucks are all grouped under this, purple banner. But these were just preliminary sorting. So as we go into our breakout sessions, everybody should feel fully comfortable coming back and saying, hey, look, this one needs to be standalone all by itself. So, hopefully we can just get those of us that vote here on the same page as to what subcommittees we actually need for, funny ideas, new ideas, things that the Air District doesn't traditionally do. I'll be perfectly frank with everybody. My main goal in getting these subcommittees spun out is to solve those tough problems on new strategies, but also to let the Air District do their job. There's stuff that they've done for a long time. Around like the locomotive switches. I don't have a whole lot of community input for Todd to get give money to a train company. I presume that's something Todd knows how to do. And so hopefully we can get some agreement on which of these incentive measures we want the Air District to run with and give us status updates on at the monthly CSC meeting. So that's the method behind that madness. And I'll stop sharing so I can see if anybody has any questions. Oh yeah, I see Gene's got his hand up.
Maybe inadvertently. Gene, are you?
There we go. Sorry about that. I was button pushing. Yeah, when we talk about something with the greening, I know that the city of Stockton has always had problems where we allocate the money for the planting, but we need to also allocate the money for the first 5 years of growth of the plants. If we don't do that, we're going to have difficulty getting buy-in from the city.
Yeah, no, great example of what this subcommittee needs to chew on and decide. All the urban greening programs I've ever been a part of have failed to fund that maintenance period. Our hands aren't tied. Like for the first time, we have really flexible dollars here that we can use to fulfill these projects. So to your point, Gene, there are other urban greening programs here in the city of Stockton that are missing pieces. We can help supplement that and really maximize the number of trees we get planted. So yeah, that's, great example of the kinds of detailed diving in we need to do in the subcommittee.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Matt, for that background, and I appreciate it. Just so you all know, I think 2 main goals, maybe 3 main goals. First main goal is, Matt and a few others have put some thought into it. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking it's pretty good, maybe you have some comments or questions, please let your facilitator know if you think things, as Matt said, should be moved around, should be broken out. But really, we want to, like Matt said, stick to we're trying to get these hard new ones. I'll tell you right now, we have never done in-home air filtration. You are the first CERT to have it. That's something that we could see why that's going to be its own subcommittee, something we need to tackle together, figure out. And then the rest of them, to the point of that we actually talked about with air monitoring earlier in our subcommittee, we want to get things moving right away. We want to provide you with updates. That doesn't mean that if it's not in a subcommittee, there isn't interaction, there isn't process. You'll notice that folks have asked that there be an outreach subcommittee. That's going to tackle everything that outreach does. So that'll tackle the things that don't have subcommittees even. If it's lawn and garden equipment, we don't need a subcommittee to figure out how to fund, a new electric lawnmower, but maybe we need to, in the outreach committee, we'll touch base with you on how we're going to do outreach. So that's kind of the goal of that. I would say the second main goal, as I mentioned earlier, is to get those implementation partners. A good point is, when we're talking to the city about urban greening, it might already be in this spreadsheet that you'll see here in a moment, but those are the types of things we're thinking of. Who do we partner with? Who do we reach out to? Because what I think main goal number 3 is I have a personal goal of making sure at least one, if not a couple of these, we at least doodle poll and get on the calendar like ASAP. After this meeting, we're starting to schedule, we're starting to invite partners, and we want to know who to invite and what you all think. So we're moving. This is it. This is implementation. It's different. It's going to be very different than we've done it before. So with that, I think we can break out into groups and get a lot of your great feedback.
Excellent. Any last questions before we do the breakouts? We haven't done them in a couple of months, but we have done them. There has been a Zoom update. So our hope is that they are similar instructions for before. Heather and Zong are going to coordinate the breakout groups. It should automatically give you the option to go into a room or automatically place you in a room. And so that should come up very shortly. And we've got about a little over 30 minutes for you guys to have this conversation. So we've got enough time for you to sit in your small groups and really have a discussion about this really important process in SERP implementation. Oh, wait, if you have any questions, now's your last chance. But other than that, I'm going to ask, and then I don't see any yet. So I'm going to ask Heather and Zong to begin the breakouts. For those of you that are remaining in our main channel, you are likely not a member of the CSC. And that's the main priority. Our goal was to make sure the CSC got assigned. We will not be assigning public members, but if you are an organization member and would like to be assigned, just shoot us a note and any one of us can move you over into a breakout group if you'd like to be moved.
Hey, Erica, Deldy here. I'd love to be put in a breakout group.
Great. The rest of us get about a 30-minute chance to just take a breather, come back. Take a breather and come back. Those of you members of the public, thank you for your patience. Grab a snack, grab a drink, and then come on back to us if you can.
Erica, can I be placed in the room wherever John Cadret is? I'm supposed to be following him, so appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Sounds good, Michael.
Thanks.
Room 1. Mm-hmm.
A wildfire just started a few hours ago, about 20 miles from my house. So I think I'm actually going to drop off right now and start
So sorry.
prepping evacuations.
Oh, Scott, our thoughts are with you.
Oh, thanks. Hopefully they'll get it out soon, but thank you.
Yeah.
Be safe.
Thanks. Good luck with everything. I'll check in on everything after things settle down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My husband texted me that we might be losing 3 old vehicles because they're parked in Colfax at friend's house. And
yes, there's a new fire in Colfax. Yeah.
So crazy.
The season is here, unfortunately. It's so unfortunate.
Yeah. Scott, your background picture is way too adorable. A dog?
Yeah,
Tell us the story.
You're talking about that one?
Yep, that one. Tell us more.
Yeah, sure. That's one of my 3 pups, Joey.
Okay.
And it was, I think, 4th of July weekend. We were hanging out by the pool, and Joey normally doesn't kind of tolerate too much funny business. He loves his scarf, so when he gets groomed, he loves his scarves. But we were hanging out, and I forget how it started, but a friend that was hanging out with us kind of said that she thought that Joey should get some hair product like I wear. So I went in the house and I got some hair product and put in his hair and spiked his hair up. And then we just kind of, as you can see, he's got spiky hair there. It normally doesn't look like that. We kikied a little bit and had some fun with that. And then she went and slipped the sunglasses on him. And he actually just sat there like he was chilling out and enjoying it all. So very unlike him to enjoy all of that attention and all that handling. And so he enjoyed it enough that I actually got to snap a picture. And when I posted this on Facebook, one of my other friends commented that we look so much alike that could be me. So I thought I would actually just use that as my profile pic on Zoom. It's certainly much cuter than I am. So.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's a very adorable picture and just put a smile on people's faces.
Good. I'm glad. That's the effect I would hope for. But yeah, it's the long story of, we call him Jojo or Joey, and he's Jojo. Typically, again, doesn't tolerate that kind of attention, but he was chill that day for some reason.
That is too cute, Scott. So adorable.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you mind putting this picture again and then take a picture and send it to Kim? She would appreciate. Take a picture. Okay, thank you. We'll put a smile on her face too for a second.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
For those of you that are still listening and are following us on social media, we are planning to have everybody back in about 30 minutes or so. So please feel free to take a break, and we'll probably resume a little closer to 6:40, 6:45.
Erica, it's 6:37 on my computer. Should we send them the groups like 3-minute warning, 5-minute warning?
Yeah, I was thinking, Zong, if you want to send a couple minutes, I think we had slated 6:45, so maybe a 5-minute warning.
You may do that now, or you may wait till 6:40.
Maybe wait till 6:40.
Okay, so give them about 3 minutes. I'll send them a warning then. Thank you.
Thanks, Zong. I think our breakout groups are going to close very, very soon. We should be starting to see some of our CSC buddies back in the main rooms shortly. Thank you all for taking such a lengthy break with us, and we're going to come back soon just to wrap up our meeting. All right, Song. Oh, perfect. Just broadcasting a 2-minute message. So we should be seeing our friends in the breakout rooms heading back to us any minute now.
I'm going to go ahead and close all rooms.
Brian, you had this look, you were looking down in your camera, and I swear you looked just like Stanley Tucci for a second with your glasses on.
Oh,
you might
thank
get that
you.
all the time.
No,
but, like,
it's funny. So I've been bald since like I was like 25. So it's funny seeing the progression of people that they say I look like. Like
Oh
it
my
becomes
goodness.
older and old. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
no.
non Tucci at one time. It was like even Kelly Slater maybe at some time, like
Ooh,
Andre
yes.
Agassi. But like I'm definitely moving into the more mature realms of
The
bald.
Wow,
glasses make
Stanley
it too.
Tucci is
yeah,
all the
glasses
rage
too.
right now. So
Yeah,
that's a huge
Stanley
compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's a
Yeah.
good one. He's a cool dude. That's so
He's
funny.
touring Italy and eating like crazy,
Yeah.
apparently. Yeah.
There are some cool bald guys out there. Yes.
I am with you. That happens to me often too. Is like I remember what I used to get. Like I just have one of those faces, so there people always like equate it. And yeah, the person who it's evolved into, yeah, gets older and older. And
Hopefully they're all good doppelgangers. Any doppelgangers are good.
I'll take it. I appreciate it anytime.
Well, welcome back to all of our breakout groupers. We're happy to have you back. And I think we are back at our full numbers. Hope you had a good time kind of connecting with your fellow CSC members and really thinking through SERP implementation strategies and how to move things around and how to work in committees, right? Because implementation is going to take all of you. And as Matt mentioned, there is a lot of work to be done, and we'll probably have to have some parallel paths to get that done. And you've certainly moved right on your way. We don't have time today to do report outs in every single group or in any groups actually, but what we will do is make sure that there is sort of a coalition of all of the content and the discussion that you had amongst all of those groups, that gets shared with you in some way that's meaningful so that you know what was discussed in all the right places, so that nobody feels left out, but that we spare the time for this meeting for our public comments and our wrap up. But thank you for spending so much time and really being diligent about thinking through this SERP implementation process and how to do that with the committee structure in mind. And certainly thinking about the charter that was just developed, how to do that in the context of how you want your committees to operate. So we are going to move into our last section, which is our standing updates. And we did already, in light of the discussions we've been having and a lot of the activity that's been taking place, we've already had an air monitoring committee and an air monitoring update that was sent via email. It was pretty comprehensive. And so there's no additional update today on air monitoring, but there will be additional discussions and updates at another time and a meeting to be scheduled in the near future to cover some of those big topics that certainly are of interest to this committee. We do have a short CARB update though, so I did want to hand it over to Scott Wall, who I did see and I think is still here. There he is.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening for your update to the group.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board. I actually have several items. First, and I'll try to keep it brief because I know we're getting short on time here, but I did want to recognize the tremendous amount of work that you've done to date on the SERP. And as Jessica said earlier, a huge congratulations on the approval of the SERP by the CARB board. Really is a pretty significant milestone in the program, and was very pleased with the turnout and the active participation and comments that you brought to the meeting. So thank you for that. Congratulations. And I personally look forward to continuing the working with everybody on the committee here. The second item I wanted to hit on is that I did receive a request from one of the CSC members on the committee for community capacity building related to providing written comments on development and redevelopment projects that are subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And so I thought I'd just open it up. If you're interested in helping to inform the design of some type of a CEQA capacity building for Stockton, please drop me an email or give me a call. I'll drop my information into chat. Like you probably don't already have it like 20 different ways, but I'll drop it in there so you have it handy. The third item I wanted to just bring up is that in late July, the district did forward a message to the members of the CSC about an upcoming convening for participants in the AB 617 process. The purpose is really to reflect on implementation of AB 617 and to envision ways to foster collaboration. That message did contain a link to a survey for you to share your thoughts. So we would just encourage you to please complete the survey if you haven't already. That deadline is August 16th, and I believe that there'll be more information forthcoming on like the invitation for the convening. If you don't have it already, it should be coming shortly. And then the final thing that I wanted to point out and bring up to the group is that on Monday, the district did forward a message from CARB letting you know that we've exhausted all options for keeping the regulatory monitor at the current Hazleton site. And we are back in conversation with University Park, doing our best to minimize any data gaps due to the relocation. At this point, as was stated in the message, the station may remain permanently at University Park. However, we are continuing to evaluate options that would allow us to move back to Hazleton. We do want to thank you for your time, your recommendations. I know that you all invested a lot of time working with us to try and find and give us support while we pursued a new location. And really to let you know that we do share in the disappointment of this outcome. If there are a couple of quick questions, we have monitoring staff here if we have the time to take a couple of quick questions. Otherwise, if there is significant interest from the community, CARB is happy to host a separate Q&A. And just so that you know, we also, at your request, will offer to bring brief updates to you that examine how the data from University Park compares to the historical Hazelton data as we start getting numbers at the new location. So that wraps up my updates. And if there are any questions about any of those items or specifically about the Hazelton, we're happy to take those now.
Thank you, Scott. Does anyone have questions for Scott? If so, go ahead and raise your hands, virtual or otherwise. I see one from Matt.
Hey, so Scott, the whole move the trailer thing and then the construction project wasn't going to get in the way, that changed. The construction project is growing. Is that what's happening?
I'll turn to Karina, who's our monitoring staffer that's closest to that project at this point. So Karina?
Yeah, so essentially what the initial plan was that once the building that's next to our trailer was going to be demolished, so was our trailer, since it is pretty old and weathered. Of course, you know, we would move and take out all of our instruments from there. But, you know, the county recently told us that we wouldn't be able to set up our new trailer until January of next year. And so, you know, in order to remain there, we thought we could possibly put in a temporary power pole and set up a trailer somewhere. But the county ultimately said that that wouldn't be possible, since that could possibly interfere with ongoing construction. And, you know, without power, we really face no other option than to seek another place to house our station.
Thanks. So you confirmed they're demolishing the Public Health Services administrative building, because they seemed really unable to describe the scope of their construction project last time. So we're sure they're talking about the right building.
From my understanding, yes. Yeah.
Sorry to ask you that. I just,
yeah.
I feel like I'm being condescending when I ask that, and I don't mean to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's terrible news. Hopefully it has to be moved. There's a lot of cats that stay warm on that trailer, and they're going to miss your trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. And do you have a time when you're going to pull your equipment out?
Yeah. So the plan is to have it out, you know, by the end of next week. But, you know, the deadline that they gave us was the end of this month. But, you know, staff are going to do it a little bit early in case anything comes up, of course. So, yeah, end of next week.
Thanks.
Great. And Jonathan, I see your hand.
Yes, Scott, would love to work with you on that, the CEQA preparedness thing. I think we've been able to, when it comes to projects in Lathrop, Manteca, Modesto, Stockton, for sure, we have some tricks into reading CEQA documents pretty fast. So, yeah.
Great, Jonathan, I will put you down. I appreciate that. And anybody else on the committee that's interested, I will actually drop again my contact information in the chat here. Please reach out to me soon, please, because I would like to get another follow-up meeting scheduled and get this thing moving forward.
Thank you, Scott and Karina, and particularly that's an amazing capacity building kind of exercise too for people that you might know. So certainly if you have an opportunity to help, I think that Scott's looking for that. Please reach out to him. And I think you can check the chat for his email if you don't have it. Certainly the Air District has Scott's contact information as well if you don't get that in time. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to continue with our agenda. We're actually almost done with our meeting, and so we're going to move into wrap up. As we always do, we like to encourage you to volunteer to be a community co-host for this meeting, so you can do kind of what Matt did today in your own way to continue to refine how these meetings are run and the role that you play. We certainly love that this is a community-driven process. So if any of you would like to volunteer for the next meeting, please raise your Zoom hand now or unmute yourself or write in the chat, or feel free to email the Air District and sign up for the next meeting in September. Don't see any yet, but you have time till about a little over 7 o'clock. As we look at the next steps in the agenda, we see that there's a health effects meeting that is being coordinated. CARB, if you recall, is still working on the coordination of a meeting about health effects, and they're partnering with OEHA and hoping to get something on the books very, very soon. So stay tuned for more information about that. It ties in really nicely with the presentation we had with Matt's contact earlier this meeting. So it's a really good connection between the beginning of the meeting and the end of the meeting. Stay tuned for that conversation. Certainly something that you've all said is a high priority for you. And I think the Air District and CARB are committed to making sure that that meeting takes place soon. Our next CSC meeting is on Wednesday, September 1st. It will again be via Zoom. And I did see a comment in the chat a little at the very beginning of the meeting about meeting in person again sometime soon or eventually. And I think certainly the Air District is reviewing all of the options given the Delta variant's very unique approach to how it's kind of permeating our communities. For now, our meetings are still via Zoom, and I'm sure the Air District will let you know when an in-person meeting is possible. But for now, these meetings are still virtual. So thank you for asking that question, and certainly for weighing in on your expectations related to that, and hopes, certainly. I know you all want to meet each other and see each other again, and hope we can do that soon. So now's the time when we're going to check for public comments. If there are any public comments, we would like to ask them to be placed via, if you're on the Zoom, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. If you're on social media, we ask that you, that our Air District contacts let us know what the social media channels say, social media or email. We want to make sure that we acknowledge and accept those public comments and give those of you that are members of the public a chance to weigh in if you have anything to say. You can push *9 or or raise your Zoom hand if you have any comments to make. I don't see any public comments in the Zoom channel. Let me ask the Air District team if there are any on our social media handles.
No, we're good.
All good. All right. Well, with that, I will say we've reached the end of our meeting. I want to ask the CSC members if you have any final comments at this time before we turn it over to our closing comments from our community co-host. Any CSC comments?
I just have a quick one. I put some information there, Box Track Sustainability Transportation Plan, specifically in that county area. And they're having an open house to talk about their status tomorrow. And evidently there's a barbecue.
Nice. That is an in-person meeting, certainly. And it looks like there's details in the chat, and it's 5 to 7. And thank you, Mary Elizabeth. And then any others? All right, Matt, would you have any final closing comments as our community co-host for tonight?
No, I just want to thank CSC members and Air District staff for working together on this sort of subcommittee triage. And thank you for working so hard with Taylor on sorting out some of those charter details. That feels good to be collaborating and getting stuff done. So super grateful for that. And then, the OEHA people and Stephanie and those talents, like those are the differences between communities that are protected and communities that aren't. We need that baseline health data. And so I'm going to be looking for more of it. And and I'll be sharing that with this committee. And so if anybody else is hustling corners on air quality in Stockton, please do us all the courtesy of disclosing those activities here in this setting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. And thank you for reminding this committee about the spirit of collaboration and really collecting all of the activities that you're all doing, which are so important to moving this needle. Really appreciate your efforts. Thank you for being a great co-host tonight. And unless we have any other comments from the Air District, we will say that this meeting is adjourned. Oh, I see a hand from Jonathan. I thought it was a thumbs up. Let me make sure that I get your hand.
Just wanted to ask, I know there have been a few residents asking, Erica, if the checks for last week's participation for stipends, were they able to come in yet?
Oh, you mean stipend checks for last month?
Yes.
They are actually in the mail. So they are literally coming right now. One thing to note for the Stockton, we thought this might come up. We have now added another community in Arvin Lamont, and their meetings are at the very, very end of the month. And so we literally processed all of the checks together And so we processed the checks on Friday last week and this over the weekend. So they should be in your mailboxes, if not today, tomorrow, or Friday, depending on how slow Postal Service is.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thanks all. Thank you so much. Thanks to Matt.
Yes.
I
Great job.
really appreciate that. And if you all thought Matt did a great job and you're interested in doing something similar to what Matt did, or you want to do something kind of like what Matt did, but you want your own twist on it, volunteer, attend our agenda setting meeting next week, and we'll help you work through it.
Do it. Do it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.